Seven o'clock, we will call the meeting to order. Grace Lefbrance, Cascade Township Supervisor. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Nordhook.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Supervisor Lesbrance.
Here.
Treasurer Corrston.
Here.
Trustee Kessel.
Here.
Trustee Shipley
President accounted for.
and Clerk Slater here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion or discussion for approval of tonight's agenda?
Shipley makes a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Support.
The motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordhook to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 4 presentations. We have one this evening will be an update from our planning department. So with us, we have planning director Andrea Hendrick, and we also have Danielle Bouchard from McKenna, the consulting firm who's done a lot with the master plan, strategic plan, and now the zoning ordinance and DDA. So with that, we'll turn it over to you guys and thank you.
Thanks for having us tonight. We'll try to make this short and sweet, but as you know, I've been here since February and you guys have been just tearing through, working on a lot of the stuff that needs to be done. And it's really cool to be part of a community that's looking at their needs and then addressing them and moving forward with not only planning, but implementation. So that's what we're working on. We have been working on the master plan, which was adopted earlier this year. So I'll kind of give you a rundown on the master plan. Purchase of development rights, the hotel ordinance, and our update on planning and zoning administrator. All right. So as you know, we adopted a master plan earlier this year. A master plan is our overall vision, land use vision for our community. In 2022, you guys thoughtfully so actually went through and adopted a strategic plan that really handles kind of the ins and outs of your boards, of your commission, and then the structure of staff and how they work together. So we're able to use that strategic plan to really nail down how we're going to operate as a department. And then the master plan to look at how we, to really understand the goals of the community.
So land use, strategic plan, overall public safety, everything generally, master plan specific to land use.
Correct. Exactly. So after you adopt a master plan, that's kind of your general overall direction document for a community. And now we're taking that and actually putting some teeth to it. So I think that the last time that you've had any kind of significant zoning ordinance, not just, amendments here and there piecemeal, but actually an overhaul of your zoning ordinance to make sure that it's written well, that it's user-friendly, all of that. The documents that I'm looking at show that the last time that your zoning ordinance was updated was before the 1970s. So it's some of the same.
When you read it, does it kind of read like the one that was last overhauled in the 1970s?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult document to use.
Danielle, do you feel comfortable saying what you said to us about our zoning document, maybe being one of the worst you've ever seen?
It's a tough.
Just wondering, so you
It's
feel
tough.
comfortable saying that out loud?
Yeah. I mean, should I get it to the microphone for the record?
Yeah, apologies.
Just to make us.
You work with other communities.
Yeah. So I have a lot of experience in communities from all around West Michigan, and I will say that Cascades or zoning ordinance, just in the way that it's structured, in the way that there's duplicative, but also differing information kind of put in all throughout different parts of the document. There's not really clear defined roles for staff. There's not really clear defined processes for special land use, site plan, things like that. So our goal through this process is to clarify, clean that all up, remove inconsistent information, remove information that is not conducive to the direction that the township is interested in going, most notably for the village area, for development along 28th Street, for specific land uses targeted to specific areas. And then also making sure that that sprawl is not creeping through appropriate zoning mechanisms to implement that vision of the master plan. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, it's not quite there right now, and we're looking to break up all those long paragraphs that say nothing and make sense of all of it and put it together in a document that the community also can use on their own too and figure out the information that they need.
And outside people coming here, developers, stuff like that, to make it more concise for them as well.
No surprises.
Exactly. And a lot of that, like, in conversations that we've had for years now through the strategic plan is developing that clear direction of what Cascade wants and what they don't want. And I think that there's just been so much of the township kind of getting this development that isn't really aligned with the direction that you guys would like to go. So that's going to be the main goal, and is the main goal of this zoning update, is to make sure that land uses are appropriate, density is appropriate, aesthetic character is appropriate, and preservation.
And the strategic plan, when you say you guys, we're talking residents of the community.
Yes,
The
thank you.
strategic plan came about based off from surveys that were put out to the residents of the community. You were a huge part of that process,
Yeah.
going through that, deciphering that information, and then putting together a strategic plan for what the community wants.
Yes.
It's not just the board members, it's the community.
Yes, decision makers, community at large, but driven by the community at large.
Yeah.
Then we're talking process, you already updated fees, right? Like the fees were archaic,
I believe so.
They're always going to be in process.
Yeah.
So.
but our last process was like 1998 or something like that. So you've already covered that.
Mhm. Yep. So that a lot of that is kind of like the low hanging fruit for implementation. So a lot of times when we work with communities that have outdated fee structures, is essentially what kind of happens over time is that your residents end up subsidizing cost for development.
That's what happened in Cascade.
Exactly, because developers just at that point were not paying enough money into that system to get through the process for staff time, engineering, fire, planning, zoning, building, all of these folks that need to be involved in this process. So that was kind of that major initial push that the township is, again, kind of that first step to say, okay, well, at least let's put a stop to that. And then, make sure that development processes are clear from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So back to overall just zoning process so that the community can understand where we're at and where we're headed. We're internally looking at all those kind of ins and outs of the zoning ordinance. We've been chipping away chapter by chapter. We'll be bringing those, a finished product to the planning commission, then the board for adoption. Then after they're adopted, we'll start to implement these, and it's not something that, is just all of a sudden going to make the township exactly what we want it to be. We're going to start implementing these rules. We're going to educate the public. We're going to educate developers. And then we're going to find things that are like maybe not working exactly how we'd like. And we're going to bring amendments as needed. And we'll continue to do that as, as we get applications in and as we establish that we're starting to see the kind of development preservation that the community would want. There's kind of an outline, just those steps. Then another huge piece of what we've been working on in the community development department is our preservation plan. This was a huge push for, in the master plan. And obviously we're putting funds into this. The community cares about this. There is a high, standard that the board and the community have set for preserving land within the township. So we're taking a 3-tier approach to preservation. And one of those is we're going to be working with the county. And when I say working with, what that looks like for us is that when we have developers call and say, hey, we'd like to split our land into a subdivision, and we want you to run water and sewer out to the east side of the township, we'll say, well, actually, that's not going to work because this is an area that should be preserved. However, we understand that there's value to your land. We're going to work with Kent County to be involved in their preservation, farmland preservation program.
And just to emphasize, this is a voluntary program for
Yeah.
private landowners. It doesn't,
Absolutely.
it's not something that the township imposes on anybody. It's just an option to give.
Yep.
People so choose.
Yep. And we're just going to make sure that when we talk to people, we are giving them access to the resources that already exist. Then kind of tier 2 and 3 are a little bit more involved in just what's going on in the township. So tier 2, I'll switch to this real quick. We're working on a policy. Some of this may end up in the zoning ordinance. Some of it may be a standalone ordinance on its own using what's called the transfer of development rights program. So what that does is that actually separates the development rights from a property in an area that we want to preserve, such as the east side where we already have farmland. We understand, you just went through the budget process. You understand how expensive it is to run water, sewer, all of these resources to areas that aren't already serviced. And we also understand that we only have a finite amount of farmland or green space within our county, within our township especially. And Cascade is unique in its beauty and character. So we want to do everything we can to incentivize landowners to sell those property rights, to actually transfer those property rights. So if a developer comes in and wants to develop something maybe more than what would usually be allowed, so we might have a cap on how tall a building can be, how many units they could use. But we also understand that there might be a benefit to the community to allow them to develop something a little bit more intense if they're willing to invest in preservation on the other side. So we would be doing something called transfer of development rights. We would have sending zones, areas of that we want to preserve, and then receiving zones, areas that we already have water, sewer, where that kind of development would actually be better. So it's a win-win for everybody, and it's not a tax on the residents of Cascade.
So for example, the Drury Inn right off the expressway on
Correct.
28th Street.
Yep.
That's a higher story building than what would be allowed, right?
Yes.
Higher leadership staff, they got allowed, the exchange for doing that was putting up that Cascade Township sign.
We got a really
pointing
good
towards
deal on that one.
Kentwood. Thanks for that. So then now going forward, okay, you want to put up an extra 2 stories? All right, then what you're gonna do, instead of putting an expensive sign that points towards Kentwood and looks ugly, you're going to add money to a pot where then on other places like closer to Snow Avenue, Buttrick, that kind of stuff, people who want to voluntarily sell development rights, nobody's forcing anybody to do anything, but
Correct.
that's a funding source to do that, to
Yep.
do so.
Yep, and then they would continue to own their land, they can continue to use their land. They would just have a conservation easement that
Yep.
would say, you know, we will not develop this.
So smart growth in areas where it's appropriate and can handle it. And then having those developers who are making a short-term profit, substantial profit in Cascade Township, then give back in the form of contributing to the pool that will preserve other areas of the township where we don't want that kind of development.
Correct.
I have a question. So does that development right or for the farmland owner, the developer gets the development rights somewhere else, and the people who own the land, what about when they all pass away? Does it stay with the land?
Yes.
Yep.
So, yep, those development rights are sold in perpetuity.
Okay,
So they've already kind of cashed in, but there's also the added benefit that we didn't mention of lower taxes.
Yes.
sure.
On your property. So there, it really is a win-win for everyone.
Thank you.
And then the third tier in this approach is what Danielle and I are kind of working on with the zoning ordinance amendments, where we will strengthen the standards of the zoning ordinance amendment or ordinance so that we have minimum lot coverage, we have tree preservation within our ordinance and landscaping requirements.
Another
Or
quick example,
stormwater.
so another quick example, that Fox the new dealership, was it the Subaru dealership? That
Yeah,
was
I think so.
allowed, it didn't meet our zoning requirements, prior leadership, prior staff, then the trade-off was, okay, we'll let you do this, even though, you know, you're not really allowed to under our current zoning. In exchange, your community benefit is that nobody even knows it's there, that real skinny little dog park on the edge of the property. For
Yeah.
example, so
Well,
we don't
Subaru
need a
dealership.
skinny little dog, well, maybe you use it, but sorry,
Most Subaru
Mr.
dealerships-
User, Mr. One user
Most
of the
Subaru
skinny
Yeah,
dog.
most Subaru dealerships have a dog park. That wasn't a benefit.
Oh, I
for
didn't
real?
know that.
Yes, that's part of the,
That's part of their stick or their.
Oh, it's
their
just
advertising,
like-
yeah.
yeah, it's like they
Well,
give,
then-
they give to shelters, they have dog parks. I mean, this is their
Oh.
stint.
Their, yeah, it's their image.
Well, they may have fooled us once, but they're not gonna fool us twice.
Well
Got
done.
nothing?
Nope, but in the future, well,
Let's
one,
be
we're not
honest.
gonna have any more car dealerships if we can help it at that kind, but yeah.
If I may also add to my knowledge and understanding with Cascade embarking on this process to formulate this transfer of development rights program, to my knowledge, it would be the first in the state. So to kind of lead the charge in this farmland preservation and rural
Mhm.
preservation is huge.
Is this the Lancaster, Pennsylvania model?
Similar,
Yeah.
yes.
So find out where they did it really well,
Yeah.
just like our hotel ordinance.
To my
Yep.
knowledge, people are kicking it around, but no one's actually created that policy and implemented that program, so it's
And there-
really exciting.
And-
to be
and
able to do that.
Talking about, we're putting money into it already. Right? I mean,
Yeah, the reality is, well, and there's a county match. We didn't even get into that. There's
Yeah.
a substantial county match. But then it's also, the reality is we don't have very much farmland left in Cascade
Yeah.
Township. What was it, 7% or so? It's very low.
Yep. There's only a few parcels within the township that would be eligible for the county program. They have some, pretty high standards, 40 acres, adjacent to other farmland. So as we're doing that, and we've made some good headway in talking with the county and some of the property owners already. And what I've noticed in talking with property owners, that a lot of them know each other. So there's a word of mouth that will be able to happen. And there'll be some good collaboration that will be able to happen with some of the residents from that area.
Bo's
That-
Greenhouse or Boz, I can't remember, Bo's or Boz? Boz. He's very
Yeah.
interested.
another thing too, just in general, it's a good point too, because of what's gonna be happening potentially in Lowell Township at the corner of 96 and Alden Nash there, because once that starts developing, it's gonna start trickling
Mhm.
away. And I think that anything we can do to prevent that from creeping into that set. Important.
Is it fair to say too that for the farmland preservation with the county match program, that's for farmland, but if we did this TDR, transfer development rights, then where you've got developers putting into the pool, that is not limited to just farmland, right?
Correct.
That's more open space preservation. Which we
Correct.
do have some of that
Which we will
left.
put together the requirements for that
Yep.
as part of all of this, right?
Yep. And that's why we're not trying to jump into anything, because we want to make sure that we do this right.
Mhm.
We want to make sure that we do the proper land use analysis to understand where there's value, what that value is, and how it connects to the broader vision for Cascade. So we're gonna do this right. We're gonna work hard on it, and I'm excited, to be part of it. Which leads us to the next one that we're working on that's not so conceptual. We're
This is
actually,
A+ work on this one.
about-
Talk about, what do you call it when you're one of the first people to do it?
We're the
groundbreaking,
first people to do it.
trailbreaking,
Yeah, groundbreaking.
trailblazing. Blazing. and,
I told someone else, just sit back, wait, and then you could copy our stuff in a year.
Yeah. Yep. So we have worked very, very hard on the hotel ordinance. This was something that when I started was already drafted. I think Jade, like day one, was like, here, by the way, and dropped this on my desk. I was like, okay, we're doing this. And
In
it
your spare
actually-
time.
Yep. Yep, it's gonna be great. But it's actually a solid ordinance, and I don't think I need to tell you guys, how much evidence was already available and how needed this was from the community when these were adopted. You saw the board presentation. I don't need to explain it. So the planning department partnered with almost every other department in the township to make sure that this was done right. So after adoption, we had the hard task of trying to put this together for administration. And we sat down with fire, here we go. With fire, the
Building.
public safety, building, just making sure that we read through this ordinance and understood everything that was gonna come our way, and put together an application and adopted fee schedules. That we did that over June and July. And then in August, we had public safety go out and give a letter to all of the hotel owners just to make sure they understood what was going on. We spent August putting together, question and answers. We did a Q&A that you can go online and actually watch the presentation that we did. And now we are a week away from starting to accept applications. I think I got an email today saying, hey, what about this? I'm dropping off my application right now. So I think we do have our first hotel application dropped off at the office, but I'm not looking at it until after I'm done with my conference. So I'll let you know how that goes next week. But the submission due date is October 1. We've got a lot of good feedback back and forth with the hotels, and we've invited that from the beginning. We understand it's new. So we've just made sure to make ourselves available, and we're answering questions as they come. So the applications are starting to come in. We would like to, we have it planned to have these licenses issued for the 2025 calendar year by the end of the year, and we'll see the quality of applications we get. But I'm confident from the calls that we've had with the hotel owners and with our team at the township that this is going to be successful. So stay tuned.
And if you're operating your hotel like an actual hotel, you're fine. It's just the ones who are operating it like a long-term stay or
Yep.
like cutting off fire alarms, that kind of stuff.
Yep. And it's not something, I think we've made this clear to the hotel operators. This isn't something that we're gonna walk in and, find a door with a handle that's not right and shut the hotel down. The goal of a licensing ordinance is so that you get away from all of this kind of like after the fact enforcement and get to a point where there's a standard that everyone understands, so that we're working hand in hand with operators to operate in a way that's right for this community and takes into account the health, safety, and well-being of the Cascade residents.
So then the public safety dollars that had traditionally been allocated, like first response.
Yep.
So many of those were to hotels, proactively stopping that. So they're not draining unfairly public safety dollars, fire and
Yep.
police, but instead they're operating the way they should be above board.
Absolutely.
And Cascade's not going to be in the news for some sex trafficking sting operation,
That's the goal.
at least if we are not expected.
Exactly.
Okay, good work.
Thanks. And just the last thing, we've actually got some really good applications over the last week for a new zoning administrator. So we are looking forward to filling that position probably within the month. Any questions?
No, is that the whole, can you hit on the facade improvement program real quick,
Oh, yeah.
Danielle? Or just, you've been so closely with the DDA steering that.
Yes, so the last couple months, we've been working closely with the DDA, myself and Andrea and Jade, to implement a site improvement grant program. So the DDA annually is planned to allocate funding to property owners, business owners or I should say, non-residential properties in the DDA boundary, to apply for this grant funding to improve their site through either landscaping or perhaps signage or new facades, or perhaps adding, I don't know, resurfacing, things like that. So that was just approved by the evaluation criteria for applications, as well as the application itself was just approved by the DDA. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks. So looking forward to implementing that as well, to kind of start incentivizing property owners in the DDA area to get excited and energized about updating their sites and their facades.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for giving us a semi-regular update. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you. Article 5, public comments. Now is the time for public comments on anything that is on tonight's agenda. That would include a resolution to approve the entry of a new township to the Grand Valley Metro Council, which is the Regional Transportation Authority. It would include comments on the Burton Street Bridge, which would be the bridge, a 2025 project for a pedestrian bridge over the expressway, and anything about the planning department updates that we just heard about. So we'll take any comments on that now, and then towards the end of the meeting, we'll have an opportunity for public comments on anything, whether it's on tonight's agenda or not. Anyone virtually? Okay. Approval of the consent agenda, discussion or a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Shipley supports.
So motion by trustee Kessel, supported by trustee Shipley to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Article 7, financial actions, invoices to be paid on September 26th, and also the financial statements for August. Motion or discussion?
Shipley makes a motion to approve the invoices to be paid 9/26 and accept the financial statements of August 2024. Support.
It's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordhook to approve tonight's financial actions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Having no unfinished business, Article 9, item 072-2024. Resolution to add Blendon Township to the Grand Valley Metro Council. Manager Smith? To you?
Yes, as a member of the Grand Valley Metro Council, anytime a community wants to either enter into the agreement, become part of the organization or leave, it has to go back to all the members to approve that and go back to their governing body. So Grand Valley Metro Council is a region planning alliance of West Michigan communities. They work on various government functions, planning functions, regional transportation studies, and then overall development in their areas. So this Blendon Township, which is west of Hudsonville, is interested in coming in. So Grand Valley Metro Council is looking for approval of a resolution from Cascade to allow them in.
I move to approve the resolution. This is pretty standard for all communities who want to join the Metro Council, and
It
and
is,
it's
yep,
if you read through their bylaws, it's a requirement. So
correct.
I move to approve the resolution to allow Blendon Township to the Metro Council.
Second,
It's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by clerk Slater to approve the resolution adding Blendon Township to the Grand Valley Metro Council. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Treasurer Corrigans,
Yes.
trustee McDonald,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
trustee Shipley,
Yay.
trustee Kessel,
Yes.
clerk Slater, yes, supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes, motion carried. Next, item 073-2024, approval of engineering services for the Burton Street pedestrian bridge, and that would be over I-96. Manager Smith, do you want to say anything before?
I'm going to turn this over to Eric.
Okay,
So since last year, Spalding Decker has been working on getting the plans for Burton Street pedestrian bridge. Originally, Fishbeck, a number of years, the former engineering consultant for the township, had put together a preliminary plan set for a proposed pedestrian separated structure over 190 or over 96 with along Burton Street. So township was fortunate enough in the last year, late last year, I think, when Michigan set their state budget, we were fortunate enough to receive a $3.5 million grant fund to see that bridge come to fruition. So Spalding Decker last year picked up those plans that Fishbeck had started, that we had essentially shelved before because we had never approved the actual funding to make the bridge happen. So since last year, Spalding Decker has been working on making those plans viable for construction. They've unfortunately ran through some adversities that in the beginning were unexpected. I think a lot of people probably at the township and Spalding Decker, when we originally started talking about the project, figured it very much was a shovel-ready project. It was sitting on the shelf and that we just needed to amend it for construction, but it does have some difficulties they've worked through. So originally Fishbeck had designed what's basically called a stick-built structure. It was pretty much built from the ground up. Whereas Spalding Decker has proposed and completed a plan set for a prefabricated bridge structure on top of two piers, one on each side of the freeway, which is much more conducive to construction. It's much more conducive to the costs. Just it means that there's the maintenance of traffic. There's not lane closures. There's not any length of time closures on the freeway. It's before MDOT had actually said in our meetings leading up to this point today that they would not have approved the original Fishbeck design.
even though they fish.
I don't know, I won't throw Fishbeck under the bus in the sense that they knew, because perhaps, this is 3-4 years ago, they were working on it at the time. Perhaps MDOT would have approved it, but as it is now, they would not have approved it.
And-
So it's not to say anybody screwed up necessarily, because we're talking about, 3-4 years ago when this was originally proposed and worked on. But as it is now, a bit of work had to go into it. And then to do the prefabricated, they wanted to shorten the bridge span. To shorten the bridge span, it gets skewed now. Originally, Fishbeck had proposed that it would be parallel with Burton Street. The bridge now it'll be perpendicular to the freeway. So to do that, we had to acquire a little bit of land through an easement on either side of the freeway, which Spalding Decker has been able to do.
And that hadn't been done, right?
No, I had not. And so as part of that as well, the drain commissioner, as part of their permitting process, required that we would also take into consideration future expansion of Plaster Creek, a culvert that goes through right there. They, in the next 10 or 15 years, wanted to widen that. They wanted to rebuild that culvert structure. And to be able to do that, we had to accommodate for our construction here. So we actually, once you'll get over the bridge on the pedestrian structure, you'll be on the west side of 96. And there'll be another, not a bridge, but kind of a culvert that the pathway will go over, which is Plaster Creek. And that had to be considered in the design to make all of this possible. All that to say that that's what Spalding Decker has been working on. And I've been communicating with them throughout this process. They've accumulated, it's in their proposal here, $165,000 in design fees to this point. And they're about a little over halfway what they propose is necessary to complete that design. Completion means that at the end of this month, they should have an 80% complete plan. That will go to permitting. They have to get acceptance back from MDOT, from Drain Commissioner, from Eagle, which typically takes at least 5-6 months. So they'll be looking at in the spring, they should have approvals back, and then we can start the bidding process in the spring. So before we start in the bidding process, they will provide us an engineering services proposal, which would take us through the actual construction. It would include construction inspection and contract administration, and it would get us through the building of the actual structure. And that would happen right now. They anticipate fall of 2025. So what this proposal in front of you today, all it does is it formalizes that we continue to pay Spalding Decker to complete the design, to get us to the bid process. And it's all being spent out of that $3.5 million grant the state has budgeted for us, as far as I understand.
There's a line item in the state budget.
And as far as I understand, we've received half that money. And that's how we've been paying the bills to this point.
Hey, Eric, or go ahead.
How confident are you that we will stay under that 3.5 million?
I'm confident.
You have.
Because originally we had conversations that we wanted to stay under 3 million. And we wanted to have a little bit left over, and we'd had discussions before about how we can, what the terms attached to that money and what we can do with it. So originally the plan was to have a little bit left over to try to mingle some other use out of it, pathway related, and connection related, because the money comes as the purpose of it being to connect communities, Kentwood and the Cascades. We would do something along the ways of improving the pathway between those two communities. But because of some of the difficulties we've ran into, last I knew, I think we were about 3.1, 3.2 with contingencies.
Okay.
So I am confident. Of course, anything can come up between now and the end. But
And that's the total cost, including the Spalding and Decker.
yes, yep,
And
that would,
including connecting pathways.
yes, that would include through the engineering services and the design services, and then the construction of it and contingencies.
So that dollar amount, the 3.5 was kind of what we had gawked at a couple of years ago when we put this on the shelf, because no way could the township, even with some state, it was just too expensive of a project.
2.5.
Yeah, frankly, few years ago, it was probably 2 or 2. Yeah, it might have been 2
but
point.
so-
It was at least
So
2.
the costs were much lower because this was before all the inflation and the construction costs skyrocketed. So thank goodness, I guess that's one positive that came out of the negative was $3.5 million price tag, but then that's the price tag that we could attach to get the state funding then, which makes it completely conservative and reasonable that will be adequate now, right?
The expectation is that we don't spend a dime on it. It's completely grant funded.
100%.
I have not heard or seen anything to the contrary of that. Like I said, anything can happen between now and then, but of course we would it would come back to you if something did happen, but it would have to be very substantial.
Eric, the 300,000 includes the 165 that you said they already spent.
Yep.
Quick question, Eric, has anybody estimated the maintenance costs of the bridge after it's been put up? I'm assuming it's gonna be the responsibility of the township.
So that's an interesting situation. Technically, if for MDOT to approve it, it'll have to be taken over and maintained, I believe, by the county, the road commission. Typically, the road commission's approach to maintaining like a pedestrian structure over a freeway like this is they don't touch it. For example, like we plow our pathways in the winter, they don't touch it in the winter because they don't want you to dump snow or they don't want themselves to dump snow onto the freeway. So in addition to that, we would likely contract with MDOT Bridge Services. They perform inspections maybe a 2-year, I don't remember what the interval is. And I don't know if it's different from a road to a pedestrian bridge. But MDOT Bridge Services could perform the inspection services that would be required of that structure. And it would be a fairly nominal price because they have to be there, for example, for Burton Street anyway. So there'd be an item that it would have to be inspected at an interval, which I think is every, I want to say 2 or 3 years. And then the county is technically responsible for its maintenance, but they would come back to us, I'm sure, if it needed, resurfacing or for it needed new fencing or if it needed, essentially that would be ours. But no, that hasn't been estimated.
And at this point, we're planning on making it a 12-month facility, including removal of snow if necessary, et cetera.
No.
We wouldn't be able to technically do that. It would have to be technically closed in the winter.
Okay.
How we would want to approach that, you could sign it, you could not sign it and just not maintain it necessarily. Having talked to the road commission, what they do is they don't touch it in the winter.
Okay.
It's
Thank
kind of a user beware.
So this $300,000 estimate from Spalding to Decker, it seems really reasonable. I was going back and looking at Fishback, the prior engineering firm. I don't remember they had charged us, it looked from their invoices to do the work already completed on that project that never went anywhere, $750,000. So 300,000 to get it done looks pretty good. That MDOT didn't approve and they didn't have the easements for. This township paid $750,000
Yep.
in engineering.
I won't speak to Fishback, but Spalding Decker they've done significant work on this project because like I said, it's effectively a new project. Honestly, if they would have started from scratch, it wouldn't have been much different, really.
And the fact that the state's giving us $3.5 million and not a dime makes the fact that we previously paid $750,000 for that easier to swallow. Good job, Eric.
You're welcome.
Make a motion to approve the engineering services proposal by our engineering firm, Spalding.
Shipley supports.
It's a motion by trustee Kessel, supported by trustee Shipley, to approve the engineering services proposal as written for the Burton Street pedestrian bridge engineering costs. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Having no items for discussion, Article 11, public comments. Now's the time to comment on anything, whether it's on tonight or not, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'll do in person first, followed by anyone virtually. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Matthew DeLang, and I thank you guys for having me back again. I was here earlier prior to the primary. As I told you guys then, I am running for a Kent County probate judge. It's a position assigned to the family division of the court, so doing divorce, custody, paternity, things of that nature. I'm just making my way back around again, just to kind of stress the importance of these particular roles. Actually, I think you have me and O'Hara back there too. They're both coming here to kind of making our rounds through here. But nevertheless, this is a role that I've been endorsed for by a majority of the other practicing family law attorneys. Actually, I have a list here I can provide you guys too. I have a copy for each of you that goes through and lists all the various attorneys that have endorsed me. I've been endorsed by the Mayor Walker and the mayor of the city of Grand Rapids. I've been endorsed by Judge Feeney from the Court of Appeals. I've been endorsed by both judges from Kent County and the surrounding counties as I practice throughout family law throughout West Michigan. This is an area that it takes a fair amount of experience to really kind of develop the temperament to be able to help the families that are coming before the court to get through the process in as little of the least traumatic way possible, to try to ease emotions, to make people feel heard, and to come up with creative resolutions that will help them stop the trauma, get on to dealing with the merits, and get them through the process as quickly as possible. And getting people through the process quickly has been a real issue that the court has been struggling with over the years. Having a 5-day trial over 5 months is not an effective way to try to help the families that are coming before you. If I'm elected, one of my biggest goals is to try to help keep people focused on those areas that are important, to try to get people to stipulate or come to agreements regarding at least the issues that are not actually in dispute, so we can actually focus in on trying to help these families get to a final resolution and continue living their lives. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Dan O'Hara. I'm an assistant prosecuting attorney, and I'm also a judicial candidate for the 63rd District Court. There's a new seat that's been added by the legislature within the last year, just because the court is so busy. Professionally, again, my job is essentially to try cases on behalf of victims of crime within our community. The 63rd District Court is a trial court. It's imperative because of the volume of cases that flows through that that whoever is elected to be the next 63rd District Court judge comes to that job on day one with the skill set and the background that's going to allow them to preside over cases with the amount of knowledge and legal ability that our community expects our judges to have. That court does not allow the pace of that court does not allow the judges that preside over it to be able to step off the bench, to consider evidentiary rulings, to take things under advisement. The flow of cases is just too much. As I've practiced through Kent County over almost the last decade, I've been to a sign from a lot of judges. I've tried a lot of cases in front of a lot of judges. I've tried every type of criminal trial you can think of, from simple misdemeanors to first-degree premeditated murder. 20 different Kent County judges endorse me. Sheriff Michelle LaJoy Young endorses me. And I think that's a testament to not only my advocacy for victims of crime in our community and my importance on community protection, but also my skill set as an attorney. I was rated well qualified by the Grand Rapids Bar Association. And that's not only just because of my criminal experience. As a prosecutor, I have a unique role as well. I make civil filings on behalf of police agencies, the Kent County Sheriff's Office, Grand Rapids Police Department, in relation to narcotics investigations, specifically drug dealers, seizures, essentially. And I've done a lot of different civil trials on behalf of them to generate funds to help fund law enforcement agencies for training, overtime, and things like that, that we as citizens rely on our police officers, not only to keep us safe, but then to go to court to make sure that it's not only the incident that happens, that's followed through on and justice is served for the people that are committing crimes within our community. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak. I hope you consider voting for me in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Article 12, manager comments.
Just a couple things tonight. I think since we met last, we held a very successful Heritage Festival on the grounds of the newly acquired Old Stone House on Orange Avenue. I want to thank a lot of organizations that were a part of that. Brad Anderson from the schools, Cascade Christian Church, the staff, the board for supporting it. We estimate we probably had over 2,000 people there in the matter of 3 hours, walking through the grounds and then all throughout the village area. So it was a really nice event, way to kick off something. It actually was its 4th year, but I think it was its biggest yet. And we look forward to celebrating the village more in the future. I want to make sure everybody's aware, board, you'll get an email on this, if not tomorrow, Friday, October 17th at 1 o'clock, we will be having in this room a presentation by OHM, who is the consultant from for that's looking at the Village Reimagine concepts. So they will be presenting those to both the DDA and the Board of Trustees at that meeting. I know it's a afternoon meeting. It'll be about 2 to 3 hours for them to go through the concepts. We'll more than welcome, public is more than welcome. Looking for feedback and then kind of let these concepts marinate, see what works, and then go back to the drawing board to put some final touches on what it could possibly look like in the wants and needs of both the DDA and the Planning Commission, or I'm sorry, in the Board of Trustees and then the residents. Tonight, we held our work session on the fiscal year 2025 budget. And we will have the public hearing, just for everybody at home, on the budget on October 9th. That's the next board meeting. It won't be as detailed as what we went through tonight, but you can see tonight's video. It'll be up on the website. And then I also want to announce that on October 7th, our new Parks and Facilities Director, Dan Zwick, will be starting. He was supposed to start this week. There were some things he had to wrap up, so that got delayed to October 7th. But we're very excited to get him on board, so I will have him at the next board meeting to introduce him as well. That's all I have tonight.
Manager Smith, real quick,
Yes.
where are we at I know it's just for the public questions that come in, the process on the Tuffy building and. demolition.
Yes. So we've secured a contractor to bring that building down. One of the things that is turning out to be a little bit more difficult than we anticipated, and we're working with the the local government liaisons from both Comcast and DTE, is actually getting the shutoffs. They have a pretty extensive process you have to go through to cap off those utilities. And we've started that process probably 3 weeks ago. And are still continuing to try and get a date where those will be cut off. As soon as those are cut off, that building will be coming down. We're not going to take the foundation but the walls will be coming down, the site will be cleaned up, and it'll be ready for whatever concept is decided on moving forward in the future, pending funding and final design and all that good stuff. But I know this is on recording, but I still hope to have it done by the end of October.
And the environmental fate testing.
Yes, there's asbestos in the building, but that will be mitigated with the demolition. What's in the ground was yet to be determined, and that there'll be active testing when they actually disturb the ground. Yep.
Board comments.
Always stand up and thank my bosses for being here. Candidates, thank you. Best wishes in your events. Scott, no words of wisdom today?
No.
Nick, we always hear from you. No. So everybody here and also out in the internet land, thanks for being here. And bring your neighbor back. Let's fill some of these chairs next meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Further comments, motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Sure.
So motion by Clerk Slater, supported by Trustee McDonald to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Thank you. And thanks for coming in person tonight. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having us.
Uh,